Hello, I'm Christopher Balzano, and you're listening to episode 122 of Tripping on Legends, your Campfire in the Crossroads. I'm calling this episode What Has a Head But No Face, and it's a little bit of a riddle. If you've listened to episode 121, you know that we did a discussion on all these ghosts all throughout Florida which have no head. So I guess you kind of know the first part of the riddle. You know you're going to get a ghost story. You know that ghost is not going to have a head, but what's up with the face? You're just going to have to listen to the rest of this. This is actually a continuation of that discussion. We cut the episode in half. So if you haven't listened to 121, you're not exactly going to be unprepared, but it's worth getting into that episode. And while you're at it, check out the rest of our archives. We just switched things over. So if you've previously been subscribed to Tripping on Legends, you've been getting it on whatever platform you get your podcast, it's about time you go back in and resubscribe, because you're not going to be getting it anymore, because we're not putting it out with the same company anymore. So you're going to have to go back in, and while you're at it, you might as well follow us on social media. We are at Spooky Tripping on Instagram, as well as facebook.com/Tripping on Legends. And of course, you can always go to the website, www.trippingonlegends.com. So why don't we get right back into the discussion with the Animal Hearn and I on a potential legend trip, which has so many other opportunities. We are going up to the state capital, Tallahassee, Florida, the gateway to the Bend, however you want to call it, to explore a unique ghostly legend that has actually completely changed the way that it presents itself over the last couple of years. What do I mean? You'll just have to listen. And remember, here's hoping that all of your trips are legendary.
Next legend. So that's cool. This is the one. This is the one we're doing.
Okay.
This is the one we're doing for sure. For sure.
Until they say no.
And no, we're not going to get thrown out of this one. I can almost guarantee it. There's a place 30 minutes outside Tallahassee.
Okay.
It is called Walkertown, right? In the 1830s, a guy by the name of Dr. Joseph Buckman, who was, I think, a local physician, got his hands on two Native American chiefs' heads, right? Mm-hmm. This story's kind of thin, but he wanted to conduct experiments on them, right? And so he chopped the heads off these two chiefs who had died in the area and kept them for experiments. And then he eventually, the town fails. It's a ghost town now. Town fails. But if you go to that area...
No way, in Florida?
No, you believe it or not, near Tallahassee, too. They are walking around the town, walking around the area, still looking for their heads. Right? So once again, we have a doctor. Mm-hmm. We have head. Mm-hmm. We have nefarious head usage. Mm-hmm. And these ghosts are still said to be walking around. Now, I've not been able to confirm any of the details of anything I just said, which is why I'm like, I don't know why. Was he the local doctor? But this is the story that they tell. I think that there are just two headless dudes walking around, and they've made up the rest of the story kind of around it.
Okay. Did you find any information on other headless
I've not
people?
yet. Well, I have a whole folder of headless people. These are the ones that I've chosen. But I'm only using this as a transition, because as soon as I heard that, the doctor, the build, it reminded me of FSU's Keene building. So one of my favorite episodes, if you haven't listened to this one, you've got to listen to this one.
Okay.
It is called Bundy, Bikinis, and Something. And it's our tour through all these different college legends, mm-hmm. including at FSU, there's this place called the Keene building. Do you have any idea what
number it is? Around?
68.
Okay.
I don't know why I just said 68, but I actually do think it's episode 68. Just go to Tripping on Legends on any platform you can get podcasts and type in Bundy and Bikinis, and I can almost guarantee you that it's going to pop up. Like how many. But are you going to do that right now? You're going to try to prove to me?
No, I may forget.
Dr. James Velmakine was a professor who had a laboratory on the campuses of FSU. And he was obsessed. Even after it became somewhat illegal, he became obsessed, or was obsessed, with the idea that a lobotomy could solve any mental health disorder. And so
a lot of doctors kind of
right. So he was trying to perfect the technique of lobotomy, but then they made it illegal, right? At least in terms of research.
Was this the main guy that was doing it? The lobotomy guy?
Yeah, this is James Keene, and the building is still called the Keene Building. And so once it became illegal, or it became legal to at least experiment, he would take homeless people and he would lure them into the building, which still stands, and he would conduct lobotomies. It's fairly recent.
Yeah, right.
I could, of course, check because I have it. Look at. So we explored this. You know what came after this?
You save all your notes?
Of course I save all of my notes. It happened in the year I didn't write it. So, there you go.
Was it like 1900s though?
Oh, yeah. It was late in the 1900s because lobotomies, I mean, they're still, in the 1970s they were still doing them, right? Or they're still doing them now, aren't they? I think it was the experimental part. I think it was the experimental part that was, the part they were concerned with. We have to check that. Type in lobotomy. It looks nice too, right? Doesn't it?
Yeah. You want me to type lobotomy? Or
no, I don't want you to really
Bundy.
type lobotomy.
Bundy.
Bundy bikinis. See, it was right there.
Bunt cake?
People were known to
58.
1958?
No, 58.
Oh, 58. Did I say 68? That was pretty good, though. At least remember the 8 part. People would be wandering around the campus of FSU with this dazed look. And, they looked like zombies, right? He basically was creating these zombies. It said that after he died, all those people who had lobotomies, somehow their spirit stayed there.
If I was, a woman in, the year they were doing lobotomies, they definitely would have tried to do one on me.
Yes. I would. I kind of wanted to do one earlier. And that office where he conducted those experiments, the lights turn on and off unexpectedly. So the entire building will be black because it's classrooms and things like that. And people, all of a sudden the lights will go on, but just on the 3rd floor. So let's just say Tallahassee has a history of headless people. Which brings us to, I think, the centerpiece. Now, I'm pretty sure we're going to cut this up into 2 episodes.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
So this is going to start, this little Tallahassee trip is going to start episode 2 of this.
The last lobotomy was in 1967.
1967? Okay. Mm-hmm. So maybe it was after that. Let's talk about Calvin C. Phillips.
Okay.
Who is said to have died in Tallahassee
This is a different
in
story
1919. Yes. Although there's no death certificate, right? They only were able to verify that he died in 1919 based on receipts to the funeral home, right?
Okay.
Because there's no record of him ever actually having died.
Do they have death certificates back then?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, it's not 13.
You said 1919. I have no
1919
idea.
is
what year
only
did they start death certificates?
I don't know.
Shall I
Alexa,
look it
when
up?
did they start death certificates? She never answers when I ask her. He is buried in a mausoleum, which is this supposed to be absolutely gorgeous mausoleum. I've seen pictures of it. At the time that it was created, it was considered this absolutely beautiful piece of architecture. Not even just oh wow, that's a pretty crypt, but rather that is absolutely gorgeous. It has these pineapples kind of woven into it. They're not upside down. In Oakland Cemetery, and he is considered.
Is that where we went to?
I've never been to
Oakland?
Tallahassee in my life.
No.
It's considered. He was considered the first person buried in
Mausoleum?
Oakland Cemetery.
Okay.
And it says Phillips on the top. So if you look at it, This is that. And it says Phillips. And then sometimes, right above the Phillips, you can see him sitting at the top of the mausoleum.
Is that his last name?
Phillips, yes.
Okay.
Calvin Phillips. His ghost, I think, of the things we've talked about in terms of like why would you be in a cemetery, it's going to make sense why he might still be there. He was born probably, because they can't even find like records of his birth. He was born most likely in 1834. Like I said, Phillips is probably not even his real name. It's almost impossible to figure out where exactly he was from. He was an architect, right? He was a designer. It's said that in 1889 he helped design for the Paris World Fair. Like he had like a medal for having done that. But he is the only way that they can track his history. Are there some census records from like Pennsylvania? There's some census records from towns in the Midwest. He belonged to the Boston Apollo Club, but then he also belonged to the Chicago Apollo Chorus. So it was like, is this the right person?
Yeah,
Things like that.
Probably a lot of guys
all these things. He worked in Delaware. They say that he was from the Midwest. The one thing that they can say for sure is that by the time he gets to Tallahassee, his wife and his 2 daughters are living in New York. So they're able to confirm at least, right? We got a guy, he's in town, he's presenting himself as Calvin Phillips. He has a wife and 2 kids, they are separated. They never make it down to Tallahassee.
Okay.
Right? But him and his 2 daughters, a lot of this stuff comes from the Democrat, the Tallahassee Democrat, as well as Betty Davis, not that Betty Davis, who's part of the Big Bend Ghost Trackers. And I actually got another one of their books. Oh, that I thought if we end up going to Tallahassee, we could totally grate some of this too. It'll have some other Tallahassee stories.
Okay.
I have a ton of Tallahassee ghost story books, and I've never been there.
I've never been there either.
I've never been there either. Should we go?
Yeah.
Beautiful. You know, Christmas break is coming.
Oh yeah.
Just saying.
I was like,
Just
what are
saying.
you
All right.
talking about? How did he die?
In 1907, he makes his way to Tallahassee at the ripe old age of 72. But some people say it might have been 1909. And he builds or redesigns this absolutely gorgeous house on... I have 2 different places for where it was. On this street.
That's fine.
Thank you. I'm sorry. On Gaines Street, or it's also, I've seen South Macabre Street, so I'm not sure if maybe it's the intersection of that. It's said that he was obsessed with time. So in addition to this house, his property also had this clock tower.
Nice.
Right? And it said that you could hear the ticking.
He's an architect.
He's an architect, so it was absolutely gorgeous,
Yeah.
right? I'll show you the
The
pictures.
mausoleum. Mm-hmm.
He's just got this mausoleum. Well, I'll get to that. So he builds his house, and he builds his clock tower, and it was like when you think of a clock tower, you think of like it rings the time, and then like ding, no, the bells or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This was so.
Yeah, more of like church. Like.
This was so synchy that
Synchy?
people. Thank you, I invented that word. That people would hear the actual ticking of the clock. I hear the ticking of the
Why'd you call
clock.
it syncy?
Like it was supposed to be kept great time, so it was in sync.
Oh, in sync, not
Bye.
like
Yeah, that's why I said syncy.
sunk.
No, not sunky, syncy. And so it said that he would sleep in
still
his
there?
house. It is not.
Oh.
It was taken down in the 1980s, right? It was taken down in the 1980s. Eventually, it becomes the voodoo dog, which is this. Is that you? Speaking of chimes,
Hot dog stand?
it becomes a hot dog stand like this. A hot dog restaurant, right? But it closed. The hot dog restaurant closed, and there's going to be a new burger place there. So maybe by the time we get there, it's a burger place. However, I don't want to talk bad about the voodoo dog.
Grilled cheese place.
It would be well, I wanted the voodoo dog, but I guess there was a really badly run business, and there are all these like lawsuits and attacks for him being racist and stuff like that. I guess there were
The hot dog
Confederate
place?
flags hanging up in the hot dog place, and so I was starting to fall down the rabbit hole of the voodoo dog, and I'm like, this is not really connected, but I felt the need to at least like justify the time I spent by at least mentioning it. He builds his house. He builds this perfect clock tower, right? The clock is running perfect. It's loud enough that like the entire neighborhood hears the ticking.
To, like, wind
not
something
just
like
even
that?
like the hours, huh?
To wind a big clock like that?
I imagine that you have to do some kind of work. I don't know if you have to wind it. I think it just works on its. I don't know. That's the research you can do about this leading into it. Then he begins working on his own mausoleum.
Wow.
So he designs his mausoleum.
Well, he's in his
Now
70s.
he's in his 70s, right? So he's 70. He's over 6 feet tall, but he's so like old that he's kind of like stooped over. He's got this long white beard that goes beyond his knees or like beyond his waist. He's
Wow.
stooped over. He's kind of
Have you seen a
curmudgeon-y.
picture of him?
I've never seen a picture of him. I wasn't able to find a picture of him.
Okay.
He is. He doesn't talk to people. He's reclusive. But he's always banging his cane, like as he walks and as he talks to people to like emphasize. So even in that cane, he's got like the same like ticking of the clock thing going on with
Okay.
it and everything
Yep,
like that. You
I
know.
get it.
So he starts to build this mausoleum.
So when he's headless, we know it's him because he does that cane ticking.
Yeah. The only person who's even slightly his friend is a guy by the name of Senator William Hodges, who's a local lawyer. He's so obsessed with the perfection of this mausoleum, he most nights doesn't go home. Right? He literally builds into the mausoleum a little shelf that he uses as a cot. Right?
Wow.
And when it starts to get really hot in that hot Tallahassee weather, he takes a nap in his own grave.
Wow.
So it was known for
Does
like
he die there?
stop, I gotta do this. You're killing me.
Do it.
Boom. There you go. Okay, so he sleeps there at night sometimes. He also makes sure that there's enough room for 4 caskets. So you can
his
assume
wife and-
that he thought in his mind that he was going to be reunited with his wife. Although at 70
I know,
something,
just
like,
thinking
why would
that.
you even like
And
care
his
at that
wife's
point,
getting-
right?
I mean, his
Like, and what is she
kid's
gonna do?
getting
Like,
married and
what could you
stuff.
possibly done in year 71 that you didn't do in the rest of the marriage?
Well,
And
plus-
why are his daughters not like
They-
with their own families
Yeah.
and their own grandkids at that age? All of this is not, unfortunately, in the records, which always lends to like, is that what really the
Yeah,
story is? But one of his daughters does come down after his death to like claim his property. He completes it. He then goes about building his own casket, right? And it's this beautifully designed casket. I like how she's looking at the notes to kind of like, let's get to it. What happened? What happens? He finishes it, right? He then goes to Hodges. He gives Hodges the key, right?
Well, that's his friend.
That's his friend. He then here's where the reports mix up a little bit. He goes back to it, and a week later he's found dead on his cot inside. He literally crawled into his own grave
Wow.
and died. Now there's some reports that say he actually locked it from the inside, and then someone finding it locked, opened it up and be like, "Where is he?" You know, like, and they found him in there dead, and his ghost remains. Right, and so people now here's
Did
where
they
it gets.
cut his head off?
Here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
I have not been able to get, like, these articles are not from 2000. They're from at least 2000, right? Like, they're from later times. So how long his ghost has been seen, I've never been able to get a report of.
Okay.
Right? Whether his ghost being seen is something new or not. However, there seem to be 2 different variations of the story, but I kind of feel as if here's where the folklore comes in. Some people said that Hodges killed him, right? That he had enough money and being the executor that he kind of like trapped him in the
Mausoleum.
the mausoleum, because sometimes instead of being on top of the mausoleum, he's seen walking the distance between where his grave is and where Hodges' grave is, not too far away. It's like 10 yards away. So Hodges is built close by.
What did Hodges gain from him dying?
Money. He was the executor of the will and everything like that,
okay.
right? Or there was rumors that that Phillips had actually committed suicide, and Hodges had helped him, and that maybe he had like second thoughts about it or whatever, and so like that's why he's trying to find Hodges in the cemetery.
So that's why he haunts the
In
cemetery.
April of 2000. Right, neither of which makes sense to me, because like, would you kill a 72-year-old man or who's building his own grave, or would you just allow it to happen? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
He was
it's
being impatient.
or other thing is, would you kill yourself at 72, or just be like, would you have someone actively try to like help you commit suicide, or would you commit suicide at 72
It's a lot
or at
of
that
questions
point?
we
We can't answer. What we can say is that in April of 2000, the legend changes.
Okay.
Maybe. Because at that time, someone breaks into his crypt and steals his head. Now, we haven't talked about it from the dead side. We've talked about it from the why might the ghosts be
Right.
left behind. What do you think there is to gain from stealing somebody's head? Like, why steal somebody's head? And why steal the head of someone who is like, you know, it's not like he's famous, rich, or famous, or whatever
Well,
like
okay,
that.
if it's in a mausoleum, it's not like in a coffin,
Yeah.
so you don't have to dig or anything, and it's kind of like, it could be like a dare, or it could be like a, I don't know, like a cult thing.
So we were just, it's funny because they were just doing something, some YouTuber who's really popular, who I don't know, asked Jeff to go out to the mausoleum that's in the Freetown State Forest, because that has an infamous story of someone stealing this woman's head. I've got the pictures if you want to see, of the headless body.
No thanks.
Okay. Or you could buy Dark Woods, Cults, Crime, and the Paranormal in the Freetown State Forest. And because there was so much cult activity there, they assumed that it was for cult reasons. Because there is something about like drinking
I
from
hope
the
it's
head.
not like a TikTok reason.
In 2000, I don't think it was, but let's not
No,
start
but now you
TikTok
said that
trend of
even
stealing
now.
heads. But there is this idea of like drinking, like you have some kind of power with heads, but also drinking from the skull
This is like an
of
old
somebody.
head,
Well, right, so which means it would be a skull, so you wouldn't have to boil the flesh
though.
off.
True.
Like there's your cup right there. Like just gotta
So
like
do you
seal
think
it
it's
a little
cult?
bit.
A cult thing?
It's why him is the
Well,
bigger
because
thing
you can
of
get
this.
into it. They don't care who it is.
I gotcha. I see what you're
It's just
saying.
easy.
Yeah. I mean, I would want it to be of one of my enemies or something like that. So you're talking about a guy who died 80
It's
years
more
ago
about the
from that point.
convenience. It's convenient.
Wow, you have the laziest cult members ever. They're like, hail Satan, but only if it's easy.
Well, it's not like you still have to.
I don't know.
Get
You know what?
into
That's
it.
you know, and I think that I've never really talked to Alan Alves about why that woman's specific head was taken. Whether it
Was
was
she in
the
a
same
mausoleum?
reason, she was in a mausoleum. That's why,
Yeah,
which is now
it's
sealed
easy.
up. Now his
Easy
ghost.
head.
Now his ghost. And we all know cult members love easy head. He is now seen doing that same kind of stuff, but without a head. So, if you follow the folklore, the story itself has changed. And since his real physical body lost his head, his ghost now has also
What do you think about
lost its
that
head.
as the expert?
I think that his ghost was never seen before 2000. I don't think it's been 100 years of ghost spottings, of ghost sightings. I think that the missing head in 2000 sparked the legend. That you had this
Yeah, well, 'cause we've talked
famous
about that-
figure, you know what I'm saying? This like kind of like local hero, this random guy who basically created his own grave and then crawled into it and died. Right? Who was a known person in Tallahassee. I think all that stuff is real. I think all it's true. I think it was an eccentric character, right? And then all of a sudden, his head is stolen, and now that sparks ghost stories, and people kind of retrofit the rest of it, and like, oh no, his ghost has been seen for a really long time.
Well, we've talked about how like ghosts like what they were wearing the day they died, or like if they were sick.
Right.
Or, like,
be careful.
how
Be
do they
careful
come
when you
back?
go out, because if you die, that's what your ghost will be wearing for
Right,
eternity,
but,
kind
like,
of thing.
Or do they die? Do they come back like their best selves?
Oh, right, because you and I were even talking about, we
their
were talking about
age
Boca
or
Raton,
when
like,
they're sick
are you
or
your
the-
perfect age?
Yeah.
And we had Lucy or Mary.
Right.
We had Sad Mary, who was.
Right.
It seemed that her ghost was before she had gotten sick.
Right.
Yeah, and I think in this case,
I can't imagine like something happens to your physical body after you're dead for years and years. Your ghost is now that. That doesn't.
well,
sound-
here's the thing, and of course we're folklorists, right? So we're not approaching it from a paranormal part; we're approaching it from a story part. Why would the guy
Why would the legend
we
change?
had a guy who stole treasure, right, and had a knife fight, and so now and the body was put like with the treasure, and now he's walking around with a horse trying to find his head, right? We had a woman who was decapitated by pirates after they forced themselves upon her, and so now she's walking around looking for her head because like they threw her head in the ocean or something like that. What's this dude's? And anyway, why would he be there? Why would he be walking around? Why would he be unsettled? People say he went crazy at the end, right? People said that he was because of the grief of his parents. He obviously
He was a little
his
bit.
family wasn't coming, but he was still building the caskets for them
Right.
in this kind of delusional state.
Right.
Now, we have an episode called Natalie's First Time, which is the one time we've ever done a paranormal investigation,
Okay.
right? And we went and we investigated this private house in Punta Gorda, and there was, as I looked into it, the ghost of a man who had dementia, or he had
Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's. And there was a confusion, and I felt that his ghost was going from room to room to room, and you would feel this like increased like agitation, and you would feel the ghost go from room to room to room to room, right? And it was like, to me, it was very palpable. Like it was almost as if he was going through you and get this like sick feeling, and then if you stopped, your mind would get confused. Like you would have this like weird thing where you couldn't focus. Is that why he remains? Story-wise? Like, is that the leap that we're supposed to make? Because that's us saying, okay, here are these details. It's not saying... In other words, when people tell this story, they don't go, and because he was so grieved for his wife who would not come with him, his spirit remains. Like, it's not said like that. But we're making that leap. Do you think that that's maybe why he's there? Because he's crazy? Because he went... He lost his mind at the end. And so he's wandering...
No, but he wasn't there until they took his head. So is he there?
Well, that I can't prove because I can't find any reports. I would love to talk to Benny Davis to know whether or not
Right.
2000
Right.
there were also reports of this ghost, right? Or whether or not it's a new thing that they're now saying, oh no, it's been here for a long time, but now it doesn't have its head.
Yeah.
You know? The other thing that you can do, which doesn't involve head,
I'll do it.
is it does involve rapping. You go to the mausoleum. You rap on his. You rap on his mausoleum,
Knock.
like knocking, rapping.
I thought of the other two rappers.
Or you were like, hey, Mr.
Yeah,
Ghost.
no,
I'm
I
here
thought
to-"
about Christmas paper. Like,
Oh, like let's go wrap our presents at the mausoleum. If that's where you want to wrap your presents, you're more than
rap it in Saran wrap. I don't know.
rapping.
It's almost 11 o'clock. Anyway,
No, it's
rapping.
okay.
You could have said
Rapping.
knocking.
Knocking. Okay, rapping sounds better.
Nut if you out of context.
Okay. Did you just hear, by the way, hear my ghost rap? That was like the worst
Yeah,
rap.
so
Like the
bad.
most.
I
That
tried
was
to
like
just-
dad rapping.
Yes, I tried to just talk over it.
Considering what a great rapper I actually am, that was kind of weak. He'll either knock back, like you'll hear pounding from inside the mausoleum, like a little rap battle, or he'll actually respond to questions that you ask. So if you knock and then like ask a question, Kind of like that other one we did where you like knock. You're supposed to say like, you know, how's your day going? And he goes, it's a horrible day. You hear from inside the mausoleum. Do you remember that episode?
No.
How do you not remember that episode? That was so awesome.
Me.
It what? Who else? Who was
You have other people on.
No, this was you because this was over the summer.
I don't recall.
That sounds like something we could do. I've been trying to avoid cemetery after cemetery after cemetery.
I love cemeteries.
But yeah, you kind of like cemeteries,
do.
so it's okay. And I am writing a book about cemeteries. But that's something we could do. Tallahassee. When are you free for break?
I'm not.
You're not free. You're not free at all during break.
I'm in Massachusetts. La, la, la.
All right. All we need is an overnight.
Okay.
An overnight to Tallahassee, and I can get us like 2 or 3 legend trips.
How long is the ride?
It's long.
Okay.
It's like at least 6 hours I think to Tallahassee. It's not a it's a trip and a stay over and a trip back.
Right.
So, but I think that would be a really cool one, and we haven't done Tallahassee.
No.
I literally have like 4 books on ghosts about Tallahassee and legends in Tallahassee, and we have not
Okay,
ever
those are
been
your signs. You have to go to Tallahassee.
We have to go to Tallahassee.
We have to go to Tallahassee.
We have to go to Tallahassee. So, hopefully, we'll be able to figure out a time to do that. What are we gonna? Hashtag Philhead.
Philhead?
Yeah, because his name's Phillips. Philhead.
Oh, okay.
Hashtag.
Phillips head?
Yeah, like hashtag. We'll do hashtag Phillips head for our journey
We'll get
to
some
this one.
Contractors in there.
Like let's get the contracting listening.
Architect.
And those contractors, if they wanted to listen, they can find us on all podcast platforms. Yes, we are not only on iTunes.
so
Make sure you
excited we're on
resubscribe. Amazon Music, obviously Stitcher and all those kind of things. iHeartRadio. You can actually say play Legend, and they'll go like playing it on iHeartRadio. And now even Spotify. So you can make a playlist that you share with your cousin, and that cousin can add Tripping on Legends onto it. Until then, and with that hashtag PhillipsHead, you can follow us on all our social media. That's facebook.com/Tripping on Legends, as well as on Instagram, which is Spooky Tripping. And Spooky Tripping? Yes. Spooky Tripping. And then, of course, if you want to drop us a line, it's spookytripping@gmail.com. It's Tripping on Legends if you want to follow us on TikTok and get kind of some of our stuff. I tell you, this is the time of the year when I get really bored because I go on break and I can't go anywhere because I have no money, that I just start making content. So, in addition to working on Whistling Past the Cemetery, I'll also be putting out plenty of social media, including our hashtag PhillipsHead trip. Anything else that we think we need to say?
No.
Does that interest you at all? Does this head interest you at all?
Yes.
I think that would be a nice, cool little trip. And we don't even have to do it like sneak into the cemetery at night or something like that. This
But I
seems
kind of like that.
okay, we'll go sneaking for head. I got no problem with that. Until that time, my name is Christopher Balzano,
I'm Deanna Mulhern.
and here's hoping that all of your trips
Legendary.
are fun for me. That was a really long episode. An hour and 43 minutes. But we're going to cut it up into 2 episodes.